right.
One question for you. Is it going to be live on YouTube?
Yep.
Okay.
Be live right now.
All right.
So we'll let a few people get in here. I'm gonna share the link. Make sure people know we actually in the building. We find some clean music to play.
Hey, I was gonna tell you play some see, hold on, got it live me. Yeah, I was gonna tell you play some Goku music.
I take back to the lung, killer stress to the head. I'm trying to do more for the soul, way less for the bread. Yes, sir. I take back to the lung, killer stress to the head. I see the things that they do way less than they say.
Yo, can I spit?
Cause it's war on the real, baby. Look outside.
I got the instrumental.
Cause it's war on the real, baby.
Hey, I hit a little something.
Oh no, okay. Hold on. Let me play, cause this is an actual cut. Let me play the instrumental since you're gonna spit. Let me go and get you right.
All right. Just let me know when I can go.
Hey, go whenever you want to. Like I say, this is the instrumental, so.
See how this is rolling. Go. All right. Wait for the beat to drop. All right, here we go. Hey, yo. Get loud with this rhyme, making sure that you hear me. Escape out the devil's hands because he tried to kill me. Get the towers, the flaming arrows start to shout. I'm getting wiser, but it's not by my own power. I'm like a tree being planted by the river, so strong by the source that my leaves are never wither. Oh yeah.
Oh, you've been holding out.
I did.
You've been holding out.
I couldn't really catch the beat like I wanted to, but that's just a little bit.
All right. We actually got a few people in the building, and I ain't even shared the link yet. So I think we good to get started, my brother. We can go ahead and hit them cameras.
All right. You may hear a little background noise. My wife just came in, but it's all good.
It's all good. We know everybody got lives, so ain't no biggie. So as y'all can see, we got our brother Negetee back in the building. Do my usual spiel, and then we'll get right to it. So as y'all know, DMG the poet, aka Brother Pianki. And like I say, let me do my usual spiel. Let me say hotep. To my Kemetic brothers and sisters, God bless. To my Christian brothers and sisters, shalom. To my Israelite brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum. To my brothers and sisters in the NOI. Islam, to my Moorish brothers and sisters. Peace to my brothers and sisters in the nation of gods and earth, them 5%ers. What's up to my atheist brothers and sisters out there? And Jumbo, to the rest of my brothers and sisters throughout the African diaspora, be it here, in the wilderness of the United States of America or beyond. Y'all know I say that greeting for one reason and one reason only. It's because if you're black, like my homie Pure Black, I'm with you, and I hope you with me. Our different ideologies should not keep us from uniting, and we can disagree without being disrespectfully disagreeable. And we can have unity without uniformity. So with that being said, let's get to it. My brother Negetee, the floor is yours. And I assume this is a friend of yours that I just let in.
Oh yeah, my brother Darian.
Okay.
That's Darian Eaton. We have a ministry together, Kingdom Fire, and also Anointing Spirit. So
Okay. Peace to the brother.
right.
All right, my brother, the floor is yours. You say you have some theories and some evidence about the biblical Exodus. This is, of course, of keen interest to me. So do your thing, my brother.
All right. Let me see if I can share the screen. All right, put this on. All right, so pretty much, I've been wanting to do this for a good little while. You already know this. So, I had to apologize because I hadn't had the time to come on here, but we're just gonna go ahead and get into it. So pretty much, this is just a presentation of the Exodus, and also how the Exodus is a shadow of Jesus Christ, because we know during the Exodus, the Lord established what was called the Passover. And so therefore, Jesus Christ then becomes the Passover lamb. And we know last week we had Passover and Easter. But let me move forward. So the Exodus, what is the big deal and why is it so important? For us as Christians, if the Exodus is not historical, if it's not real, then the entire biblical narrative is in question, from Genesis all the way up to Revelation. So this is why this topic is so important. Basically, my objective is to show, and will show, how the Exodus, and you remember I asked you, we're going to do a part 2 to this, because there's a lot of information that I'm gonna be putting out on this one. So this first presentation basically would deal with as to why I abandoned the conventional chronology, but also I was also keeping in line with the scriptures. But again, it's really based off of Jesus Christ, because again, if the Exodus is in question, then our salvation is in question. And if the Exodus is in question, then the creation is in jeopardy, not jeopardy, but is in question. So Exodus, what is the big deal? Why is it so important? Again, if the Exodus did not happen, then the entire biblical narrative is in question. So one of the things I want to point out is foreshadow. So Jesus is the Passover lamb. Everybody last week was celebrating Easter. Some people were celebrating Passover. And the basic definition of what it means to foreshadow is to predict something or to give a hint of what is to come. And Paul explains briefly the purpose of type figures or foreshadows. So this is what he says: don't let anyone condemn you for what you eat or for what you drink or for what you celebrating certain holidays or new moon ceremonies or Sabbaths. For these rules are only shadows of the reality yet to come. And Christ himself is that reality. So basically, these things pointed to Jesus Christ. The Exodus pointed to Jesus Christ, specifically the Passover, which is again why this subject is so important. So as you can see here, I don't know if you can see, when the children of Israel were instructed to place the blood of the lamb on their door, this is what it would actually look like. When the blood ran down from the top post to the sides. And again, this is a foreshadow. And I know this is just a cartoon, but this is just an illustration of what, this is an illustration or a foreshadow of what was to take place 1400 years after the Exodus.
Nah, this is heavy though, bro, because I've never seen it illustrated like this, but it's heavy because at that time, if I'm not mistaken, it ain't no Rome, so it ain't no Roman crucifix. So that's heavy. But go ahead, my bad.
No, you good, and that's perfect illustration. I mean, if you really think about it, you're taking a branch and you putting blood on the top of the post. It's going to drip down, and on the sides. I mean, it's perfect illustration, side to side, side by side. So biblical timeline. I'm gonna have to move this over so I can see myself. All right. So biblical timeline. It was in mid-spring in the month of Ziv, between April and May, during the 4th year of Solomon's reign, that he began to construct the temple of the Lord. This was 480 years after the people of Israel were rescued from their slavery in the land of Egypt. And I got a note here, synchronizations between certain events in the reigns of later Israelite kings like Hezekiah, Jehu, etc., and Assyrian chronology records fix the 4th year of Solomon's reign at around 966 BC, thus placing the Exodus at 1446. Sometimes some people say 1447 BC, seeing that the widely accepted view of Solomon's reign is dated to 970 BC. So basically, and this is just straight Bible timeline. If you look at the conventional timeline as to when Solomon was king, and we look at what the Bible says, it was 480 years after the time of the children came out of Egypt when he began to build the temple of Yahweh. What I provided here was man, I'm telling you, I did this a while back. You may have seen this spreadsheet when I did it with, presented it with Adam Coleman. Peace out to the brother. But if you can see here, and fact check me if you want, this is the conventional chronology for Egypt. And I got them side by side based upon, now on the right side, this is just, on the right side, it's the conventional was actually the Bible chronology for when the children of Israel were from Israel to the patriarchal time, to the time that they sojourneyed in Canaan and went into Egypt, and then the divided kingdom. But if you look, I want you to see, I got an arrow right there where it says Exodus 1447, 1446 BC. Notice, I want you to notice this. Second intermediate period is between the second intermediate period, 1759 BC, and then the New Kingdom, 1525 BC up to 1069 BC. This should throw all kinds of questions up when you look at it. For example, you've made the point that how in the world can the children of Israel go from Egypt up into the Levant and then end up in the Levant when Egypt is predominantly is dominating the Levant? Am I correct on that? On your perspective, DMG?
I apologize, bro. I got a phone call from my son.
Oh,
But yeah,
okay.
I agree with you.
Okay, so these are the type of questions that a lot of unbelievers ask. How can you have the children of Israel in the Levant at a period of time when Egypt is dominating the Levant? So this is why I'm first tackling this situation. Let's move on. All right, so again, you can fact check me. Anybody can fact check me. These are basically the 4 pillars that the conventional timeline is based on. Number 1, the sacking of Thebes by the Assyrians in 664 BC. As a matter of fact, your boy, who was it? Taharka, he was part of that. He was a contemporary around that time. That's a established fact, is set in stone, 664 BC. Number 2, the 925 BC campaign into Palestine in year 20 of Shoshenq I, whom many Egyptologists have equated to Shishak. And you can read 1 Kings 14:25 and 26, and 2 Chronicles 12, chapter 12, 2 through 9. All right, that's the second pillar. The accession of Amos in 1550 BC is based upon the heliacal rising of Sothis or Sirius in 1517 BC in year 9 of Amenhotep. And I don't know how I messed that up, but it's supposed to be 4. And then number 4 is supposed to be the ascension of Ramses II in 1279 BC, which is year 52, and that will equate to 1228 BC lunar date. Now, let me ask this question to you. Do you know what the heliacal rising of Sothis is?
Never heard it, so you just said it, bro.
Okay, so basically, I ain't gonna go into this one just yet, but basically the heliacal rising of Sothis is, it means the rising of the star Sirius, not rising, the rising of the sun of the star Sirius in the morning time, right before the sun rises up. That word heliacal deals with the sun. You may have heard of terms like, I know it was one of your friends in the chat who believes in a flat earth or whatever, but he also believes in a stable earth. A person who believes in a stable earth and believes that the earth is at the center of the universe would be called a geocentrist, versus a person who believes that everything revolves around the sun is a heliocentrist. So anything dealing with helio or heli deals with the sun. So just like Venus, when it rises in the morning, it rises in the morning. However, once the sun comes up, it fades away. Now, for this particular star, Sothis or Sirius, sometimes it would rise like late part of July. Now, many Egyptologists believe that the Egyptians looked at this star and said, hey, this is the announcement of the inundation of the Nile.
Yeah, now, and I was gonna say, now I've heard about the star Sirius and etc. I just have never heard that the phraseology that you use.
Okay.
So, but yeah, continue though.
Okay. So the problem with this, with the heliacal rising of Sothis, is that it doesn't happen every year at the same time. Okay. In one year, let's say it rises July 21st. In the second year, it may rise 3 days later than July 21st. And then a year later, it'll rise 10 days later. As a matter of fact, if you was to calculate how if you was to calculate the rising of this particular star, when it returns back to, let's say, July 21st, it would take over 1,400 years, okay, before it will rise again right before the star. So this concept here that some Egyptologists use, they call it the Sothic calendar, or Sothis calendar, Eber calendar. They base some of their dates for the pharaohs off of that perspective.
Okay.
So again, it's like, here's another thing. You may have heard unbelievers say, "Oh, well, Christians, we worship the sun, and at the end of right at the winter solstice, the sun, right at the winter solstice, the sun goes down right there with the Southern Cross." And so they'll show a picture with the sun and a picture of the constellation of the Southern Cross. Well, if that was correct, then we have that same problem, because the sun at the winter solstice does not always go down with the Southern Cross. Sometimes they are like way apart.
Okay.
But you have to have some basic understanding of astronomy to understand that.
Okay.
All right. So this slide here, this is John Francis Champollion, also known as Champollion Le Juan. I can't speak French, so forgive me for that. But this is the man who deciphered the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and he's a founding figure in the field of Egyptology. Crazy thing about it, so Champollion only went to Egypt maybe once, but he is the guy who was able to decipher the Egyptian hieroglyphs. This was around 1820, maybe 23 BC, not BC, 1823 AD.
You know why?
19th century time.
You know
Tell
why?
me why.
He had two Coptic Africans with him, and you know that's the last vestiges of the Medu Neter language is the Coptic language. So because people give him a lot of credit, and it kind of make my skin crawl. but had it not been for those Africans, he wouldn't have had nothing. So, but you don't hear about them unless you dig a little deeper into his journals and things of that nature. But yeah, he has some assistance.
That is true, and you will see why. You will see why I feel like he received way too much credit once we go through, or once we go further through. All right, so now if you look back at, let me see if I can go back. But if you look back at what was it? If you look back at the four pillars I was talking about, pillar number two dealt with Shoshank coming into the Levant and just decimating Israel, or decimating the Levant. Of course, like most pharaohs do, they place their victories upon the wall. The first three rows of Shoshank the first. Oh, well, let me go back just a little bit more. These four pillars, number one is secure. The first pillar of the conventional chronology is secure. 664, we can't doubt that one. Number two, Shoshank the first, equating to Shishak, that's questionable. And this is what I'm showing you here. And if they base the date off of Shoshank the first coming into Israel, if you read again in Kings, where it says Shishak came in to Judah, and he took He took the shields of gold. I'll bring that up in a little bit. I'll find it. But pretty much, Champollion looked at this and was like, "Oh, well, we found it. We found Shishak. We found him." And so basically, the cartouche that he found. Can you close the door, please? It's my sister-in-law, y'all.
Y'all got duct tape on y'all bed?
So the first 3 rows of Shoshank the First campaign located at the Babelstoke portal at Karnak, containing the names of several cities in the Levant, as well as all being conquered by Shoshank the First. Name ring number 29 was identified as Yod HaMelech. So Champollion, when he saw this name ring, Champollion began to read the city names: Ajalon, Gibeon, Mahanaim, Bethshan, Shunem, Tanat, Megiddo, and so on. But when he came to this name ring right here, he read the signs Yod HaMelech. And when he saw this, he said, "Oh, this is Judah. This is Judah." And so that's how they made that connection there with Shoshank the First. That's one way they made that connection. He said, "Oh, this is a confirmation. This is confirmation that Shoshank the First is Shishak of the Bible." And here it is again, Champollion's translation, Yehuda HaMelech, and he thought that it meant Judah's kingdom or kingdom of Judah. Let's continue on. You see that, right?
I see it.
All right. However, this man right here, Max Muller, he stated pretty much that Champollion's interpretation or transliteration of that name ring was read wrong. It doesn't mean Yod HaMelech. It means hand of the king, and it should be understood as a monument. So basically, Yod HaMelech is like, okay, so Pianki goes into where you stay at. Let's just say you go to Houston. All right, you go to Houston and you set up a stone vessel there to say, this is where I've come. This is where I'm leaving my mark. That's what Shoshank did. So it's the hand of the king. That's what he did. So when Max Muller, when he properly translated that name ring, it read hand of the king, not kingdom of Judah. That right there for me was like, I'm like, okay, so we on to something here. Now, what I did was provided you all here with the campaign of Shoshank. The one thing we need to understand about Shishak and Shoshank, when you look here on the left side, this is the campaign where you see here's the 29 names listed on those name rings. Okay. Notice number 14, as I provided over to the right, it shows you where number 14 is at Ajalon. Ajalon is probably was the only city that Shoshank took that belonged to Judah. Any other city that belonged to Judah, he didn't mess with. He didn't mess with Judah. He went straight up into northern Israel. Now, for my Christians, if they read the Bible and understood, if they understood the relationship between Shishak and Israel, when Solomon was older, he had a son named Rehoboam. And there was I believe it was probably one of his generals who had a son, and his name was Jeroboam. So the people loved Jeroboam, and this is still during the United Kingdom. It's still during the United Kingdom. The people love Jeroboam. Solomon saw that. This is years later, because Solomon at first he was the wisest, one of the wisest king of Israel, but later he turned coat. You know what I'm saying? And he started worshiping Marduk and even giving children over to be sacrificed. So Solomon turned away from the Lord.
He was getting some good loving from them foreign women, wasn't
Hey,
he?
hey, I don't know if you can hear me, but I don't see how he could deal with just one.
Oh man!
Oh, my mouth.
Hey, you know that it'll get you every time. But love's gonna get you.
But the funny thing about it, that's the reason why God told them not to do that, because with the many wives, they will turn your heart away from the Lord, and that's exactly what happened. And so with Solomon, he grew envious of Jeroboam. So Jeroboam, he was going to try to kill Jeroboam. Now I'm gonna ask you this, bro. I'm gonna tell you this, and I'm gonna ask you this. Jeroboam said, I'm out. I'm giving it to you in layman terms. He's like, man, I can't do it. He's trying to kill me. I gotta go. Do you know where he fled?
Kemet.
Exactly. Jeroboam fled down into Egypt to chill with Shishak. Okay. When Jeroboam came back after the death of Solomon, before he got to Shishak, it was a prophet that anointed him as the king. And basically, Jeroboam took over the 10 tribes in the north. You follow me?
I'm following you.
Now, check this out. And I want you to judge for yourself on this. Now, the map on the left may be a little fuzzy, but the map on the right is a little clear. These are all of the identified locations that Shoshank went and conquered. Where are they located, my brother?
Point to it again.
All the dots that you see numbered here on the right side, where are they located in the Levant, in Israel? North, east, south, or west?
Let me see. South.
Actually, most of them.
Well, let's say southern Galilee. So that's my bad. Man, Israel. I can't really tell from this.
Is most of the cities that Shoshank.
But I'm looking at it on YouTube too. So.
Oh, most of the cities that Shoshank conquered were in the north.
Okay.
Okay. So
wait, let me ask you this then.
Okay.
So if the cities he conquered are in the north, did he just skip past what was in the south, or is it like we always say, they north and was different from our north? So what I mean?
It's not like Egypt. It's not like Egypt.
Okay, so he skipped past certain cities and went to okay, I got you.
Just looking at the map, he was tearing northern Israel up. This is Shoshank. Okay. Now, if the Bible is telling us that Jeroboam became the king of the northern tribes, number two, he was friends with Shishak in Egypt, why would Shishak then turn around and go up into northern Israel and ransack all of his cities? They were so close that Shishak didn't even want him to leave. Now, does it make sense that after a few years go by, I go and ransack your cities?
No, I don't.
So that was question number 2 for me. So then let's continue on. Here it is again. And I got this from my favorite man's, David Rowe. This is what he says. Row 1 to 3 of the Shoshank 1 campaign city
Killing
list.
me with David
The
Rose. Go ahead. You're killing me with that dude, but go ahead.
That's my man's in them. But anyways, from rows 1 to 3 of Shoshank 1 campaign city list, the Bostrophodon principle pretty much is, as you see, is it numbered here? It's called as the ox plows. So you go from right to left, then down, left to right, down, right to left. That's the Bostrophodon concept, and that's on. That's not only on Shoshank's wall, but it's on Ramses' wall. It's also on who else? I believe it's Seti's. But anyways, so this is what he says: row 1 to 3 of the Shoshank 1 campaign city list. The Bostrophodon principle is employed in this inscription for reading the order of march of the Egyptian army, i.e. right to left, and then left to right, and then right to left. The campaign begins by listing the traditional enemies of Egypt, known as the nine bows. Then a single name ring, number 10, I don't know if I'm blocking it, but number 10, it carries the introductory phrase, list of towns. The campaign proper sets out from Gaza, from the south, the progress through Shefla to number 14, before ascending to the central ridge of Palestine via the Ajalon Pass to Betharon to Gibeon. There is then a long geographical gap as the valley to Bethshan, number 24, turning westward to enter the Jezreel Valley. We then have two major cities of the Tanakh, Megiddo, listed at the end of the row at number 2 and the beginning of row 3, respectively, thus demonstrating the Bostrophodon principle. Next comes the submission of a series of towns in western Jezreel before the army heads across the Caramel Ridge via the Aruna Pass at number 32. The other rows of the city list present and list represents the itineraries of the secondary strike force sent to subdue the towns of Jabbok Valley in the Transjordan and the Central Hill country of Ephraim, and a series of fortresses located in the Negev. And only one of the towns besieged as belonging to the king of Judah, which is, i.e., Ajalon, and is mentioned in the list. So we have a problem here. If Shishak went into Jerusalem, why isn't Jerusalem listed here? Now, looking at the name ring, and remember what we said about the itinerary, right? The itinerary is almost like it's like in an ABC order, or it's like this town, this town, this town in chronological order. If Jerusalem was hit by Shoshank the First, why don't we see Jerusalem somewhere here in between lines 14 and 15? Why don't we see Jerusalem there? However, when we look at Yahad Melech at ring number 29, that city is listed, that city is way north of Jerusalem. So Shoshank cannot have possibly went into Jerusalem as the Bible says he did. Because from what I'm looking at, Shishak and Shoshank are two different pharaohs. All right, let's move on. So, and this is from Peter James. I don't know if you heard of them. Peter James and Vander Veen on Solomon and Shishak. This is what they say. Concluding remarks: the conventional dating for Shoshank I places his main campaign in the Levant, 925 BC, equating it with the biblical account of Shishak and his conquest of Rehoboam's fortified cities in Judah, with Jerusalem being spared by buying off the aggressor. Yet, as has been frequently demonstrated in the maps I just showed above, the toponym list for Shoshank I accompany his brief campaign account bears no resemblance to the biblical account of Shishak's campaign. That's the major part. That's the main point that I'm wanting to point at. He continues. The suggestion remains tentative until the discovery of further documentation. Yet the idea of Shoshank, as well as reestablishing Egyptian influence authority in the region, was providing military support for Israel, helping it to recover towns that had been conquered by the Damascene king Hazael. If again, this would require some biblical knowledge. If during the divided kingdom, there was a king from Aram or Syria. He came from Syria and he was taking towns in Israel. Shoshank, this Shoshank the first, the reason why he went north is to stop this Damascene king from taking these cities. And the Bible says that the Lord provided them with a savior. So my suggestion is basically Shoshank the first is not Shishak, but he's this unnamed savior that was provided to Israel during the time, I think it was Joash. I can't remember the king's name, but early in the divided kingdom period, when this king was taking over Israel, Shoshank definitely went up and stopped it. He stopped it. But him being Shishak, no, doesn't work, because again, from the archaeological evidence, we don't see Jerusalem in his campaign list.
And so it's a little bit of uncertainty as to some people may have came in late as to what it is you actually trying to do. And remember, the name of the show is Theories and Evidence for the Biblical Exodus. So briefly explain what this is part one, and then we're gonna get to part two another time. But just briefly explain what it is all of this is sort of pointing to.
All right, so part one basically is just me establishing the idea. Well, I don't even say the idea. It's just me pointing out why I don't accept the conventional chronology. And I will go on to then demonstrate how when the chronology is revised, how the evidence that's been out there all this time synchronizes perfectly with what we see in the dirt. And some of the old or conventional ideas about, for example, Shoshank the first being Shishak of the Bible doesn't work. And so that's one of the pillars of the four pillars that that most Egyptologists and scholars and things depend on. There are so many different Egyptologists out there that have gone against the grain, like David Rowe, and they catch so much flack. But that's what happens when you go against the grain. What I've demonstrated was that first of all, Champollion misidentified a name ring as Judah when it's actually the hand of the king. And this name ring is actually located north of Jerusalem. So it can't be Jerusalem. If we look at the Bostrophodon principle, right to left, down, left to right, down, right to left. If we see the principle of that, then you'll understand that this name ring that was misidentified by Champollion, this is the conundrum that we see in the conventional chronology. And I'm just digging in to that point. Again, Shoshank the first. This is so the other two pillars, they both depend on pillar number 2, and that's Shoshank the first. But it doesn't match. His campaigns does not match. So basically, and so before I can even talk about the Exodus for real, because I'm gonna be given dates and I'm gonna be given pharaohs of those particular dates. When certain people go out there and want to Google these particular pharaohs, they're going to see dates like 1210, 1220, 1227 for people like Ramses II. But in a revised timeline, Ramses II falls under more so of a 9th century, 10th century time frame. And that's what I'm about to go into right now.
All right.
All right. So my theory from what I've researched has been that Ramses II is most definitely Shishak. I honestly believe that Ramses II is Shishak. And the reason why is because, unlike Shoshank, we have some evidence, archaeological evidence, that shows that he actually did go into Jerusalem. So this is from the Egyptologist Kitchens, and from his book. It's listed here. If anybody wants to go get it, order it, or whatever, feel free. But this is what he says, page 67. Ramses took things in hand. In no time, he reached Gaza. A flying column swept the Shasu Bedouin. That's another thing we're gonna have to address later on. He swept the Shasu Bedouin back east out of Canaan entirely. Then Ramses dealt with East Palestine, led by the senior prince Amenhotep Kosha. Forgive me if I butcher that name. The flying column struck down through the Negev hills, across the Rift Valley south of the Dead Sea, and up into Edom Seir, conquering their settlements. Then the prince's forces swung north across the deep ravine of the Zered into the heartland of Moab and along the traditional King's Highway to conquer Batartu. Now, here it is. At the same time, Ramses himself, now I'm going to tell you what's going on. He has a secondary force, or his primary force is going to the right. They're going to the right of the Dead Sea. So they're conquering cities in that area. But Ramses himself, he comes up and he goes east. And I'm going to show you, I did a little map. I'll show you in a second. At the same time, Ramses himself swept around in a clockwise arc to complete the pincer move. So it's like, I don't know if you ever, like me being in the military, we call this flanking. We flank. That's when one goes to the left, another one goes in like an L shape, but then we cut across in like almost like scissors, and then we meet in the middle. This is how we decimate the enemy within the middle of all of that. And we meet up and we regroup. So basically, this is what Ramses did. It says that at the same time, Ramses himself swept around in a clockwise arc to complete the pincer movement across the hilly central ridge of Canaan, past Jerusalem, over the Jordan, past Jericho, and north end of the Dead Sea, and south into Moab, striking at Gibeon. That settlement taken, he then came on south across the Arnon Valley stream to link up with with his general Amenhotep Kepchef. In his movements, here it is right here. I don't know if you can see it. In his movement, this is the movement. I left the second force out, but in his movements, this is the direction he would have gone. Okay. I didn't put the line over Jerusalem because I wanted Jerusalem to be shown. But in this movement, he hit Jerusalem on his way to Jericho to meet up with his general. How do I know that? By that. That's right here. And it's hard. It's really hard. I'm gonna tell you like this. It's really hard to find some of this stuff online. So a lot of my stuff comes from the books that I read. So forgive the quality of the picture. But in any case, this is called the Shalem block with the outline of the fortress facade. I'm sorry, the fortress facade carved in shallow reef. Now, when you go and read in Second Chronicles 12:9. So Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem and took away the treasures of the house of the Lord.
So let me real quick. So when you say you are certain that Ramses II is Shishak, why would he have, like, how could he be both? Because I forget what Ramses
Noman
name
is Noman. Usamatre Septemporary, Miriama.
Exactly. So why would he be conflated with Shishak?
I'll get to that in a second. I think that's the next thread.
Okay.
And for everybody watching, he doesn't have access to my PowerPoint.
I don't. I didn't know that was coming.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You asked that question, but what do you think, bro? There's a block in the Ramesseum on Ramses' wall that mentions the name Shalem, which is an archaic name for Jerusalem. Can we then say Ramses didn't go into Jerusalem?
I mean, you know, and one of the things, I don't know if people know this, Ramses was a powerful general even before he was prince, and then later Nasut. So his military brilliance is really underplayed because of how excellent a Nasut, or how excellent a king he was. But his military strategy was right up there with whoever you can name in the ancient world. So I think that gets kind of forgotten because of how he ruled. But go ahead. I don't mean to, go on a dive.
No, you good. What I also wanted to point out is that in his campaign against Jerusalem, notice there's no mentioning of any cities belonging to northern Israel. Now, what did we just talk about? Shishak and Jeroboam. Jeroboam being the king of the northern tribes. Would you come into my city if we was boys and ransack my city? If I was like a son to you?
No.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Again, anybody can look this up, the Shalem block. You may have a hard time finding it. I had to scan this from my book. You see that, bro? Shishak versus Shishak.
I see it.
So we try to figure out who this guy is because you brought up the name. Who is he? So you will see a lot of people who disagree with the Shishak is Ramses theory. Bring this up about the name. But let's look at this. Again, this is David Rowe from another book, A Test of Time by David Rowe, page 128. And this is what he says. The name Shoshank and Shishak. In Egyptian hieroglyphs, the name Shoshank is usually written Shishunk, but occasionally the N, the Shishak with the N is omitted. The latter form would thus appear to be an exact equivalent of the biblical name Shishak. However, here we go. However, the few monuments of Shoshank, the first found in Palestine, never display the missing N. Moreover, a contemporary text in East Semitic, the Akkadian cuneiform, transcribes the name Shoshank as Susink, displaying both the N in his name and, let me move this out the way, and the common transposition of the Egyptian sh, sh into Semitic s. So basically, when you transliterate names from Egyptian to Akkadian, you'll see, like, for names that have the sh, they'll drop the h. For names that have the S, they'll add a H. That's the basic way that I can explain it. Continuing. It is therefore apparent that the N was part of the pronunciation of the king's name, even amongst the Semitic language speaking people of the Near East. Hence, the biblical name Shishak is not a straightforward equivalent of Shoshank. It is in fact common for hieroglyphic writing. Pretty much what he's explaining here is that sometimes, like and maybe you can emphasize this a little bit more because you're more into Kemet than I am. When they would write names of certain pharaohs, it would be more of an artistic display versus them trying to actually pronounce the king's actual name. Does that make sense?
So yeah, with this one, bro, I gotta disagree. And I'm gonna tell you why. So we know for a fact every king had hell up to it could be 10 royal names, but we know at least 5.
Mm-hmm.
But they were all predicated on the Kemetic language. No matter what the the connection was to the cuneiform or what is that, Phoenician or whatever the Akkadian, these other languages, they were predicated on the Kemetic script. So I'm having a hard time following this one. Okay. Just because of that.
I got you. So maybe this one will help you a little bit more. The Hittite treaty, which is written in cuneiform, they don't call Ramses they don't pronounce his name in the same way that the Egyptians do. Usamatre Septembre would actually be Washmaria Shaptipnaria. That's how they would pronounce it. If I wish I had my documents with me, I can pull up some stuff. But as you can see here, this is broken down. And there's a thing called a hyperisticon. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard it, but I haven't gotten any what's the word I'm looking for? Breakdown on it, if that makes sense.
Okay, so like my real name, you would call me Negetee. But for some people, it's hard to say. So I just tell them, just call me GT for short. So a hyperisticon is a shortened version of somebody's name.
Okay.
And so right here, you asked the question about the names. It's like, what's going on with the names? So Washmaria Shaptapnaria, Ramses Miriamon, in the Hittite treaty of the cuneiform tablet, is pronounced Shisha Miyamana. Shisha Miyamana. And I got the arrow showing Shisha. Shisha or Sisa, it could go either way. Shisha or Sisa is a shortened version of Usamatre Septembre Ramses Miriamon. If they were to refer to Ramesses all the time, they wouldn't be calling him constantly Usamatre Septembre Ramesses Miriamon. It wouldn't happen like that. They just call him by his short name. We see examples of this also in the Bible. Who was it? Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria. His name is shortened. They use a hyperisticon and they call him Pul, P-U-L. It's a shortened version of his name. This is an ancient custom that was always used. Now, are you familiar with Proto-Sinaitic?
My bad.
You
Yes,
good?
sir.
Okay. Now, once we go to part 2, you'll love this topic here. But basically, I'm pointing at this particular symbol because in the Proto-Semitic, it represents a wav. All right, it represents a wav.
Okay.
All right, so when I wish I would have put it on here, but if you was to look at a Paleo Hebrew version of Shishak's name, it would have, hold on, maybe I can pull it up now. Let me see. Forgive me, bro. Let me see if I can pull it up. Can I pull it up? It won't let me do it for some reason. Hold up. Photos. I don't know why it's going so slow. My bad, bro. It won't let me pull it up.
Oh, you good.
But basically, and this was like the hardest part to explain, but the Hebrew equation here, the Hebrew equation for the name Shishak, and because you asked about the name Shishak, this wav here is the same symbol that is used for the end character for Shisha, what I was showing earlier, right here. Shisha, well, that end syllable wav. Let me see if I can find another one. Right here, I'm just showing how this symbol went from, if you can see it clearly, this symbol here went from Proto-Canaanite or Proto-Sinaitic from a wav. When it got, by the time it hit Greek, it turned into a Kof, or the K, or the Q. So Proto-Sinaitic from 1750 BC, the symbol for wav was a circle on top of a stick, what they call a lollipop stick. And the Phoenician Archaic Greek by that time dated 1000 BC to 750 BC. It evolved into the Kof. So back to the slideshow. And I'll provide those drawings for you when I get a chance.
Okay, you good.
Okay. All right. So Josiah, king of Judah, finds the books of the law. And the reason why this is important. Come on. All right. All right. So this is from 2 Chronicles 34. And when they brought out the money that was brought into the house of the Lord, Hilkiah the priest found the book of the law of the Lord given by Moses. And Hilkiah answered and said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah delivered the book to Shaphan. And Shaphan carried the book to the king Josiah and brought the king work back again, saying, all that was committed to thy servants, they do it. And they have gathered together the money that was found in the house of the Lord, and have delivered it into the hand of the overseers and to the hand of the workmen. And Shaphan the scribe told the king, saying, Hilkiah has, I must have mistyped it here, but Hilkiah found the book of the Lord. Shaphan read it before the king, and it came to pass when the king had heard the words of the law, he rent his clothes. So Josiah is dated somewhere between 664, 600 BC. So basically what would have happened, because you had Hilkiah, who's a scribe, and what scribes do is they are responsible for the preservation of the word. And so seeing that the events of Shishak coming into Jerusalem and ransacking it Josiah being a king of a later divided kingdom coming across this text, he would have seen Shisha or Sisa, or as explained here by David Rowe, the apparent equivalence between the biblical name Shishak and the pharaonic name Shoshank is misleading. On the other hand, the name may well have been its origins, have its origins in the hyperisticon of Ramses II. Sisa, equivalent to Hebrew Shisha, with the cough and the change that I demonstrated earlier, the only pharaoh known to have recorded a defeat of Jerusalem.
Bro,
So,
I'm just telling you, when we open it up, I'm glad I said one question apiece because you're gonna have a lot of questions. and if they stay to the end, you're gonna have a lot of questions. My boy BLS finna come in here and try to bite your head off.
I'm ready for him.
He got that. He like a what the book say? A roaring lion. See, he's a black roaring lion seeking whom he may devour right now.
Come at me, bro.
Oh, he say, "Come at me, bro." Okay.
All right. So now I'm gonna just explain this. Like I said, that part is a little harder to explain because it requires a lot more explanation, and that's why I had to break this up into two parts. But with those pillars in question, now the name situation, I give it to you, it may be a little sketchy, but we cannot deny the fact. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can find this too, because I didn't include this. I didn't include this on the in the slides. I wish I would have, but okay, bingo. Let me know if you can see this. Tell me if you can see this. Hold on. Let me see. Can you see this?
I can see it barely, bro.
Barely. All right, I'll try to find a way. I'll try to find a way to post it later. But basically, you know, we always talk about let's go to the walls of Kemet because the walls don't lie. It's written in stone. Well, we have the Shalem stone that says Ramses in the 8th year of his reign went into Jerusalem. And number two, you can go inside the Ramesseum to the left side. If you go facing, you go to the left. On that wall, we see the picture with Ramses with his bow. And for some reason, there is a temple. There's a hill and a square temple that he's shooting at on the hill. And the only square temple that I know about that was in Jerusalem was the temple of Yahweh. So we can debate the name. I'm good with that. But when I'm looking at the stones, we got Jerusalem on the stones, and we also have a picture of the temple inside the Ramesseum. That should end the discussion right there. But let's continue on. Try to get through this. All right. You got a question or comment?
No. I'm going back on mute.
All right. So right here is what I provided. This is why this is the revised chronology. Again, credited to David Rowe, but I created the spreadsheet. So we no longer have the Exodus falling right around the new kingdom time frame of Egypt. If you look at this spreadsheet, it should be easy to read. When you look at when Moses was born, you go over to the left, who was Pharaoh? Sobek Hotep IV. At the time of the Exodus, we have Dudimmus, the first or second, because Egyptologists can't figure out which one is which. They can't even figure out which dynasty he was in. But some say 13th, some say 16th. But what we do know, it was during the time of the second intermediate period of Egypt. And if you notice, right after the Exodus, you got the conquest, and look who comes in, the Hyksos invasion of Egypt. This is why, again, I cannot agree that the Hyksos expulsion equates to the Exodus. I can't, but let's continue on. If you want, you can take a screenshot of that because I'm going to be referencing it, but I'm not going to go back to it. All right, the Exodus. Now there rose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. So in a conversation with Adam Coleman, we both acknowledge that, yes, and some Egyptologists acknowledge this is an anachronism. And I know that's the boogeyman word for some people, but
so let me ask you this, because you said you don't subscribe to the Hyksos being the Israelites. You mind if I ask why?
Just looking at this revised timeline, looking at the revised timeline, the Hyksos and the things found at where is commonly called Pi-Ramses, which is actually Avaris. When we look at the stratum, or when we look at the place where Avaris sits, we see two things, and I'll go over that a little later too. That's funny because that's like next. That's weird because that's actually next. But we find a population of Asiatics in Avaris, but these Asiatics are Egyptized, meaning they have some Egyptian culture with them. But then we also find that there's a period of silence, but then another population of Asiatics come, and when they start off, it's basic, but then they go from basic tombs or basic graves to elaborate graves, which would explain a difference in the culture of the two people. And the Asiatics that come in are not Egyptized at all. They have no form of Egyptian culture with them. They're completely Canaanite style culture.
But we lost your volume, bro.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, so basically what I was saying is that when we look at the stratum, and again, that's another long discussion we're gonna have, but they date certain places by the depthness of the stratum. So they label it A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or whatever. So when we look at, let's say, for instance, I think it was stratum F. Stratum F has a more Canaanite style culture that we find at Avaris. But right below it, we find Asiatics, but these Asiatics have with them an Egyptian Asiatic mixed culture with them.
Okay, so you're saying that it was two populations of Asiatics that came into Kemet. This is according to David Roll's timeline?
No, not just David Roll.
Okay.
Let me move on. So, well, we're gonna get there.
Because and the reason I asked that is because where do we see in history, be it David Roll timeline or otherwise, where there were Israelite slaves in ancient Kemet? Do we see that in history? And then if we do we see a large number of these individuals leaving, because the only time I see it is during the Hyksos expulsion. And I feel like it's not a coincidence that these people get pushed out by a man named Tutmos. And then the hero of their narrative is named Moses, which we know Moses or Mos, or however you want to say it at that time, was like saying John in America, or or Tom.
Mhm.
So, but it always has something in front of it. So
Right.
so we know that that's not an actual full Kemetic or Egyptian name. So it just seemed like it makes sense that these people got kicked out, went back up into Canaan, and either decided to stay separated from the rest of the Canaanites because of what they experienced in Kemet, or became reassimilated. And this is just my personal thoughts. Became reassimilated with those Canaanite people, and then later on another group of Canaanite people broke off. But I think it was those people. And because you create this narrative connected to Kemet, and then your whole story is intrinsically linked to Kemet from that point on. So from Exodus to the New Testament, these people are intrinsically linked to Kemet. So it just makes sense to me that that's what happened. But I'm gonna let you rock. Go ahead, because I want to hear your explanation. Because even Josephus try to connect the Hyksos to the Israelite people. But go ahead.
Yeah. You sure you don't have access to my PowerPoint?
I don't, bro. I don't. I've had these conversations so many times.
Right.
You know how it go.
Yeah. Well, all right. So we getting close to the end. As far as your question is Israelite slaves, Semitic slaves, of course you've heard this before. Brooklyn Papyrus 35.1446, purchased by Charles Wilbur in 1881, part of a large collection of Egyptian artifacts called the Royal Cache, dated to the reign of Sobek III, predecessor of Neferhotep I. Of course, this is the 13th dynasty. This is where I have the Exodus taking place from my studies. So this document basically authorized the transfer of ownership of a group of domestic slaves or servants. And it's the cool thing about this papyrus is that, number one, 50% of the names on this list are Semitic or Asiatic. And they are designated as, you've heard this word before, Amu.
Of course. That's what the Amu.
Yeah, okay. So examples of some of the names, anybody can go fact check me. Position 11, Menahem. That's a Hebrew name. I can find that in the Bible. Position number 23, Asher. Not necessarily a predominantly Hebrew name, but it is a Hebrew name. But look at this. At position number 21, the name Shifra. Have you ever heard of Shifra? Like to hear it? Well, here it go. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was called Shifra, and the other Pua. This is Exodus 1:15. Now, my hands are up. I'm not saying that this Shifra that's listed here in this list is the same Shifra mentioned in the Bible, but once we align that timeline, when we see the Exodus really happening where it's supposed to.
So this is during the 13th dynasty, right?
13th dynasty. So what I meant to tell you was that if Shoshank the first is the wrong pharaoh, that means that the timeline has to be adjusted at least by 300 to 350 years. If we did that, then
so you're saying Ramses would then be the pharaoh instead of the 18th dynasty?
No, he'd still be 18th dynasty or 19th dynasty, but he would be not in 1200 something BC, but he would be around 900 something BC. Remember at the beginning of this discussion, Solomon established or had the temple of Yahweh built around 966 something BC, placing him as contemporaries with who? Ramses, if we follow the revised timeline. And again, Ramses is the only pharaoh that went into the temple that we see it on his wall and we see it on the Shalem block. So now when we shift that timeline, the 13th dynasty ends up within 1446, 47 time frame, exactly around the same time as the biblical timeline of the Exodus. And like I said, the evidence has all of this. I know so many people have seen this before. Papyrus 35.1446. But the 13th dynasty is listed where? Somewhere 1700, 1800 BC. That's not correct. Well, from my research, it's not correct. The 13th dynasty should be within that 1400, 1300 BC time frame. And when we do that, this is what we find: a list of Semitic names. And now we have a name that we find also in the Bible, because Shiphrah was a servant of the Pharaoh who was a midwife, or who did the role of a midwife, who was supposed to kill the male child if a Hebrew woman bared a son.
So let me ask you this, or let me posit this to you.
All right.
And then I'm gonna let you move on. So from what I know, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but you know, I study Kemet extensively, so to speak. Kemet only had 3 types of slavery. So you had, prisoners of war, of course. You were at war with the people, and you take the survivors, you put them into slavery, because they didn't have prisons. You had bond servitude, where people sold themselves into servitude for various reasons. And then you had what they call chattel slavery. Just, that's just what it was.
Right.
And so with that being the case, which one of these would you consider the slavery that these Asiatics or these Israelites was supposed to be under? Because again, the way it's described, these individuals still had the opportunity, and this is all 3 categories, unless the crime. I apologize. Not chattel slavery, criminal activity. But these would all lead to chattel slavery under certain circumstances. So depending on the crime, injury to a child rape of a female, what is it when you have sex with an animal? I can't think of the name right now. Bestiality, which, contrary to popular belief, was highly illegal in Kemet. Certain things you would just remain in servitude. But having said that, it seems that what the Bible is describing is something more akin to what our ancestors here in the United States experiences, which is why a lot of our ancestors gravitated to that story. But you didn't have that type of slavery in Kemet. So with the biblical narrative, you obviously believing it's true, and many others. Did they just veer off of what they normally did for these particular people? Is that like what we saying? Because if for the duration of their 3,000 year period, they only had these three types, did these people do something that would lead them? Like, what was it that made the ancient Kemetic people say, or the Nasut say, you know what, we're gonna stop doing it like this. We need to start doing it like this for these people. Do that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense what you're asking. And so if you so remember, I'm basing all this off of this revised timeline, okay? Around the 12th dynasty, this is where you have Joseph and the children of Israel entering into Egypt as migrants, so much so that they were welcomed. If you look up any encyclopedia or whatever, it'll tell you during this period of time, what they call the 12th dynasty, what the golden age, right? They refer to that as the golden age. And if you read the Bible, it tells you that given it's the biblical narrative, but because of what Joseph did, he helped the Pharaoh save Egypt from famine and things of that nature. So the biblical narrative teaches us that because of the prosperity of the Hebrews coming into Egypt, Egypt was able to flourish during this period of time. Nobody would disagree that there was a time of famine during the 12th dynasty. Again, more evidence, but people looking in the wrong time, or looking at the wrong time, but in the right place. But as we go further into the 12th and into the 13th dynasty, let me remove all this information off of here and just put this list in your face real quick. Now, I don't mean that as, I don't mean that in any disrespect.
I got you.
But let me just put this list right here in your face and tell and explain to me, why do we have servants, slaves, a list of slaves on this document that is dated or ascribed to the 13th dynastic period? Not only that, big ups to my brother Alfredo, when he posted, and I'm gonna move on from this slide, this one. I'm telling you, bro, for some reason you're calling out you're bringing up my slides before I even pull them up.
I told you I done had these conversations before,
but
man.
I like that. I like that because for me it shows that the Lord is working on your heart, bro.
Oh man, come on.
Stop fighting.
Man. Stop.
Well, look, my brother Alfredo.
Kick you off, man.
My brother Alfredo, he posted images of what you see here. Do you see this? Can you see it? These are wooden models of domestic servants from the tomb of Negetee. These are Semitic. And without even reading anything about these people, I knew to which dynasty they belonged to, the 13th dynastic period, between the 12th and the 13th dynastic period. So to what you was asking, for some reason, during that point in time, it seemed like Egypt did turn away from their usual treatment of people and committed this atrocity, because we don't see this type of slavery anymore after the 13th dynastic period. We just don't. So in reality, you're right. we don't see this type of chattel slavery after the 13th dynastic period, but we have to admit that during the 13th dynastic period, we had slaves in Egypt. There were slaves in Egypt, and we got a list of them. And one of them is has the same name of this woman, Shiphrah, which is in Exodus 1.
Well, again, I don't deny that there were slaves per se. I just think that is kind of is worded poorly. And I'm not here to like romanticize Kemet. My thing is Kemet had issues just like every other empire. And the fact, I had a sister ask me today, she want me to come on her show, and she was like, what are we gonna talk about? And my thing was, why do we ignore West Africa? Because it's almost like I'm tired of talking about Kemet. And I don't mean no offense, but like Africa is a large continent, and we have roots in many different areas, all of which are West and Central Africa, for me in particular. So I would like to start talking about those spiritual traditions and those cultures. So, but for this conversation, Kemet had slavery through its duration. The issue is, what do we mean by slavery? Are we talking about bond servitude? Are we talking about prisoners of war? Are we talking about criminals? That's the issue. And with that being said, and that's I'll pull it up real quick, because what I want to do is make sure we I'm naming my source, but I also want to say this, because I think that when it comes to the Israelite people, we have to understand that if they were slaves, we got to say, okay, well, they must have been criminals or prisoners of war, or they sold themselves into servitude. It like, for me, it's not it's one or the other. And so which one is it for these people? Because if this is the type of slavery Kemet instituted, then we just got to be real with ourselves about the fact that that's their only option. If they were slaves in Kemet, they only have those options. So I would ask everybody who wants to, yourself included, say, okay, this is history, this is what happened. Okay, which form of slavery were they? Which one were they instituted in? All three? Why? What did they do to be criminal, to be considered criminals? What's that history? Because we have scholarship saying these are the only three forms of slavery that Kemet had. And I'm gonna pull that up right quick, so I'm not just talking out the side of my neck, as they say.
Do I need to stop sharing my screen?
No, I'm just gonna read it, and then you can fact check me, either with a different window or once we get off the show, because I don't want to break stride.
Those are domestic servants.
And this actually on a show I did called Checkmate, where I was answering some people criticisms of ancient Kemet. And that's why I say with certain things, it's like, for me, I've talked about Kemet ad nauseum. It's like, it's time to move to a different topic. But for the biblical conversation, I understand why it's why it's necessary. So the first type of slavery they had was bonded labor. And I still had it all mixed up, but here you go. Bonded labor, which was someone who sold themselves into servitude due to debt, etc. Forced labor was when people, usually men, were conscribed to work on civil projects. For example, buildings, mining, and the like. These individuals were paid a fee for their work and thus were not really slaves because they got paid. And then chattel slavery was usually reserved for prisoners of war, but could be a person being punished for a crime such as rape or bestiality because Kemet didn't have prisons. This method of punishment was not unusual. It was not at all like the barbaric form of slavery practiced against our African-American ancestors in the antebellum South of the United States of America. And so where you can find, let me go to my references, where you can find that source is by G.J. Shaw, Slavery in Pharaonic Egypt, the Encyclopedia of Ancient History, and that's an article. You can go to that, simple Google search. Suzanne Everett, she wrote this in October of 2011. The history of slavery is from Chartwell Books, and it's pages 10 and 11. So, check my references and, make sure I'm on point, come back and correct me if I'm wrong. But that's what I mean. So I will, from a historic standpoint, I would want to investigate which one did they fall under? Because so did the pharaohs declare war on them and they were prisoners of war? Did they just become bond servants? Were they conscribed to build and then were paid, which would mean they weren't really slaves? They was just forced to work, but they got a fee. So which one were they? Because, and I know it's a nuanced conversation, but I think that's worth checking out and researching if we're saying that this thing happened historically.
Okay, so I think what I was saying is that based upon your description of the type of slavery that was in Egypt prior to dynasties 13 and 14, it was that way. After 13 and 14, it was that way. Between 12 and the second intermediate period, we have slavery of a different kind because it's not described in that particular way at any other time in Egypt's history. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. What happened here is we take our clues from, well, I take my clues from the Bible. Because of the influx of migration and the influx of the population growth of the Hebrews in Egypt, the new pharaoh who comes along around the 13th dynasty decided, hey, these people are getting much more populated than we are, so we should go ahead and put them under servitude. And I guess you can call that chattel slavery. However, there's another
Negetee, real quick. So you say it was because, according to the biblical narrative, it was because the pharaoh noticed how large in number they were getting. It wasn't because they started worshiping pagan gods, and so the Most High had to punish them, like my Israelite brothers say.
Hold on, what?
So it was because the pharaoh, according to the biblical narrative, the pharaoh noticed how large in number they were becoming, and decided to deal wisely with them. That's what the biblical narrative say, right?
Because the pharaoh he worshipped a different god.
No. What I meant was, in the biblical narrative, it says the pharaoh basically noticed that they were becoming large in number. The Pharaoh that knew them not.
That's yeah.
But it wouldn't because they were worshiping pagan gods. Because my Israelites brothers say they was being punished.
Well,
I'm just double checking to see if you're in agreement with them.
from what the scripture tells me is when we go back to Abraham in Genesis, he tells Abraham that his children will be afflicted 400 years. So it was a prophecy. It was a prophecy that they would eventually be under servitude in a land that's not their own, which was Egypt. Also, the clues come from Exodus itself. Not only was they a larger population, but also Pharaoh said it himself. If a war was to break out, they would turn to our enemies and overcome us. So it was two reasons. And we have books that are not inspired. I don't believe that they are inspired. But if you ever read the book of Jasher, there was a conflict that took place right before the enslavement of the Hebrews happened. In the book of Jasher, it states that the Hebrews were going up against the children of Esau, and the Egyptians that were fighting with them turned coat and ran. And afterwards, after the Hebrews beat up the Edomites, they left, and then they went back to Egypt and punished those Egyptians that ran. And then what followed up after that is when Pharaoh said, well, if a war ever breaks out, and because of their numbers, they may turn on us. So they put them under bondage. Those are the clues that I look at as far as the children of Israel being punished because they was worshiping other gods. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I was just seeing if your rationale was similar to our Israelite brothers. I'm gonna let you finish. We got MVP Chris Harris chomping at the bits already, so I'm gonna let you finish up and then let y'all have a little dialogue before we get some other people in here for questions.
All right, shall I continue on?
Yes, sir.
All right. So moving right along. So interesting fact about the Brooklyn Papyrus. I'm gonna read this. Perhaps the most surprising circumstances associated with these Asiatic servants is that the upper Egyptian officials of the mid-13th dynasty should have had well over 40 of them in his personal possession. If a comparable number of similar servants was to be found in every large Egyptian household, one wonders what means such quantities of Asiatic serving people found their way into Egypt at this time and how they chanced to be available as domestic servants for private citizens. Now, listen to what he says here. This is W.C. Hayes. The ratio of women to men, which is here about 3-1, might further suggest that they were the spoils of war, like you said, they could have been spoils of war, taken during military campaigns or raids in which most of the local male populations went down fighting. But we know, however, of no large-scale Egyptian military operations in Western Asia at any time during the Middle Kingdom, and certainly of none during the 13th dynasty. So the question that you asked, here you are again on my slides. Were these slaves a result of military campaigns? The answer is no. Also, there's a ratio of women 3-1. That's something interesting. Now we read in Exodus 1:16, and he, Pharaoh, said to the midwives, when you do the office of the midwife to the Hebrew women and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, you should leave him alive. So basically all I'm saying here is that this could be the result of the killing of the sons of the newborns or the newborns being killed if they were males. And we see that in this list of papyrus 35.1446, that the ratio of women is 3-1 when it comes to males during the 13th dynastic period.
And everybody remember, the name of the show is Theories and Evidence. So these are theories and evidence. Now, he not saying that this is exactly what it is. So theories and evidence. Right. So go ahead though, bro. I got to step away for a minute, but go ahead and keep building. And for everybody, when I put the link in the chat, I got kids watching now, so no cursing. Other than that, y'all can build however y'all see fit. I'm just asking, no cursing. I'm saying it out the gate. Everybody know how is intelligent and articulate. No cursing. That I'm talking to myself because I curse more than anybody. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So again, like I said, the list, the slave list of 35.1446 has a ratio of 3-1 males, and this right here, the killing of the sons of the Hebrew women, could be a result of that. And Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman. Now, on this slide, I'm going into Moses and his relationship during the 13th dynastic period. And as you can see, I have Ethiopian woman highlighted because it plays a significant role in this. So Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them, so did they. And Moses was 80 years, or 80 years, and Aaron was 83 years old when they spoke unto Pharaoh. Basically, when Moses fled, when he fled from Egypt, he was about 40 years old. He spent at least 40 years with his father-in-law in Midian, and when he came back, he was around 80 years old. And these are just general numbers. Now, when we look at Exodus 7:7, that was Exodus 7:7. On the biblical timeline, the birth of Moses would have been 1527. If he was 80 years old at 1447, all you have to do is just add the 80 years on back, and that'll put you at 1527 BC.
I'm sorry, Negetee. I just wanted to interrupt you for a quick second. You said the biblical timeline. I would like to know, how do you establish a biblical timeline?
I'll go over that once I'm done with this presentation.
Okay.
Okay. So again, the birth of Moses, 1527 BC, according to the revised chronology, he was born shortly after the reign of Neferhotep I, raised in the house of Sobek Hotep, who is not his immediate successor, but he comes after Neferhotep. He would have returned to Egypt after fleeing Sobek Hotep or the pharaoh after him. He would have been about 80 years old at the time of the Exodus, 1447 BC. And just to help you out, Chris, in the beginning of the presentation, I explained that the conventional timeline for Solomon's reign is around 960, 965, 927, somewhere in that time frame. And the Bible says it was 480 years after the children of Israel came out of Egypt. So just take 1447 and add or subtract 480 years from that, and that'll give you the exact year Solomon built the temple.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there. And since you're addressing me, I think you're willing to answer the question. In order to get Solomon's timeline, we need archaeological data pertaining to Solomon's, because it speaks from the time of the temple. Am I correct? That's what it says in the biblical narrative. And I'm pretty sure the Bible is your authority. What was the stratigraphy on the temple that was found in Jerusalem? What is the stratigraphical data concerning the temple findings?
Okay, so I'm assuming that you're looking at Bronze Age, early Iron Age.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you if you have a date. The Bible dates from the building of the temple, the
I just
completion of
gave
the
it to you.
temple.
I
Okay,
just gave
you
it to you.
gave it to me, but you're using stratigraphy in your presentation. And I would like the stratigraphical record
Chris,
concerning Solomon's temple
Chris,
in which
listen,
you got the
listen,
date.
listen to what you just asked me. First, you asked me for the stratigraphy. Now you saying that I'm using stratigraphy. If you could allow me to finish this, and then we can go back and forth. Okay. All right. Is that cool?
That's fine, but you did address
Thank
me.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Let me finish this, please. We good?
Go right ahead. You
Thanks, sir.
addressed me, so I asked you a question.
All right.
I want to be able to follow this here.
All right. So Josephus having Old Testament and other resources at his disposal. So we're talking about Moses and Sobek Hotep, the 13th dynastic period, and what was going on during that period of time. So this is what Josephus says. Titus Caesar, well, basically Josephus right here is talking about how after the temple was destroyed, that Titus asked him to take, if he wanted anything out of Jerusalem after the city had been destroyed, and he basically said, no, I don't want anything because my city is in ruins. But he did take the holy books, and they assume that the holy books is in reference to the Old Testament. So we do know that there were many other books that we don't see in the common canon today that he may have had access to. So when we hear him describe certain things about Moses that we don't read in the Bible, that could be the reason why. So Josephus on Moses and Ethiopia, this is what he says. Moses, when he came to the age of maturity, made his virtue manifest to the Egyptians. The Ethiopians, who are adjacent neighbors to the Egyptians, made an incursion into the country and seized upon carrying off the effects of the Egyptians. They proceeded as far as Memphis and the sea itself, whilst not one of the cities was able to oppose them. The Egyptians, under this sad oppression, took themselves to their oracles and prophecies, and when God had given them this counsel to make use of Moses, the Hebrew, and take his assistance, the king commanded his daughter to produce him, that he might be the general of their army. Move this out the way. He came upon the Ethiopians before they expected him, and joining battle with them, he defeated them, depriving them of the hopes they had of success against the Egyptians, and went on and overthrowing their cities, and indeed made a great slaughter of these Ethiopians. At length, they retreated to Saba, a royal city of the Ethiopians, which Cambyses later named Mero after the name of his own sister. He continues, the place to be besieged with very great difficulty, since it was both encompassed by the Nile all around and the other rivers, Astapus and Astaborus, being encompassed with the strong wall and having great ramparts between the wall and the rivers. However, while Moses was uneasy at the lying idle of his army, for the enemy dared not to come to battle, this incident happened. Tharbis was the daughter of the king of the Ethiopians, and she happened to see Moses as he led the army near the walls. Fighting with great courage, she fell deeply in love with him and sent him the most faithful of all her servants to talk with him about their marriage. He thereupon accepted the offer on condition that she would procure the delivering up of the city. No sooner was the agreement made than it took effect immediately, and when Prince Moses had suppressed the Ethiopians, he gave thanks to God and consummated his marriage, leading the Ethiopians back to their own land. So why do I bring up Moses and Ethiopia? Because just demonstrating the fact that that during this point in time of the 13 dynastic period, there was some I won't say intermingling, but some conflict between Nubia, as we can see here on this stela, and this is directly from the website of the British Museum. You can go and check it out. It basically has Sobek Hotep IV and the inscription of Wawa, or Lower Nubia, which would be North Nubia. So we do see that at least during this point in time, as a matter of fact, as I said earlier to DMV, to Bianchi, the book of Jasher also speaks about this military campaign that Moses had in Ethiopia. And just trying to put two and two together, this is perhaps where Moses got his Ethiopian wife.
I'm back, bro.
Okay. Hey, you like my meme? I think I'm almost done, bro. Let's see how many more I got. I know this was pretty long, bro.
Hey, bro, listen. You've been waiting to do this for a minute, man. You ain't no rush.
Okay, all right. So, did you have any questions with that? I know, I think Chris already got his one question, so.
No, you told me to wait until you were finished with your lesson, and that's what I'm gonna do.
You already got your one question, and I've been waiting to talk to you for a minute, so.
If you've been waiting to talk to me,
I don't
why
want to
can't
talk
we
to you
discuss
now.
this?
I don't want to talk to you now. I want to finish this. You got your one question, so.
The one that you failed to answer. And the Iwer Papyrus is actually a 19th dynastic period writing.
Now
It has nothing to do with that.
Look how quick you get caught in a lie. Because when you was talking to Jacobus, you told him that it was a.
We're not talking about Jacobius.
When you talked to Jacobius, you said it was a 13th dynasty.
It was redacted. It was redacted.
Mm.
Listen to what I'm going to tell you. It's a 13th century text from the 13th dynastic period, but it was redacted and rewritten in the 19th century BCE. I'm sorry, the 19th dynastic period. What you are trying to do, Negetee, with your theory, is bring in over 800 years of history, and then be very pseudo, mention verses in the Bible. Your Bible is written anachronistically. Now, let me say something before we start and before I let you finish, okay? I'm here to have a scholastic engagement with you and nothing more. That's all I wanted to have. I'm not here to be your enemy. If you're going to know, hold on, no, we're going to have this conversation.
Yeah, real quick.
Hold on.
Quick. Chris wouldn't hear when I said everybody would have one question. Now, my idea was to let y'all build for a minute because I knew you had been wanting to talk to him, and likewise. If that's not what you're interested in, cool. He can because he's been waiting. He can get the one question because I'm not sure. I'm asking both of y'all, can we start from scratch? Since one, Chris wasn't here when I said it, so he wasn't aware of what the expectation of was, I should say. And two, I made an assumption just knowing the history between y'all two that it would be a good build to have because I knew you wanted to talk to him and he wanted to talk to you. So I'm asking, can we start from scratch? You finish, Chris get his question, be it one or be it that y'all engage. It's up to you, Negetee, because it's your show. But I'm asking, can y'all start from scratch? That way, it's not an acrimonious situation, and y'all can have that scholastic build that the brother was talking about, if that makes sense.
I'm gonna say this. I don't know how many times, and I'm talking to you, Chris. I don't know how many times I done asked.
Hey, Bianchi, you know what? I'll pass.
Don't burn out, man. Don't burn out.
No, Bianchi, let me talk.
Yeah.
I'll pass and I'll go to a platform where I can really give out some real information here. Because I see one thing that's very common amongst a lot of these gentlemen on these panels. They come on here and they give out their information on these debate platforms. And then when the information is scrutinized, they get upset and they want to argue and they want to bring up past events. I don't have time for such foolishness. So with that being said, I'll pass, dude. Thank you.
Click.
Like your garbage information.
Right.
This
Click.
is easily debunkable. Matter of fact, Bianchi, we'll turn up on your channel tomorrow and I'll debunk this entire lesson. I'll do it that way.
Thank you.
All right.
Gotcha.
Later, Pseudo.
All right, bro.
All right. So basically what I was going to say.
I try. I try. Go ahead, bro. It's on you.
The thing
like
is,
I said, it's your show, man. So it was your preference.
Yeah, because the thing is, it's like, one, my family is waiting on me, and you know how me and him get. Like, you know how we get.
Good
Number
point.
two, it's been almost a year and some change, almost 2 years I've been trying to talk to this dude, and all of a sudden he just pops up and want to have this debate. It don't work that way. I came to talk to you, and if we schedule a debate, I would debate, but this is a basic discussion, and that's all it is. Theories, biblical narrative, that's all it is.
I got you. Expand your screen again.
All right. I'm already in a doghouse. All right, can you see it?
Yes, sir.
All right, so here's the thing about the Ipuwer papyrus. He said it was redacted, but it's 13th century. We don't know what parts were redacted, and I'm thinking he's using the terminology wrong. Redacted means when you block something out. I don't know. That don't make sense to me. If something's redacted, that means I'm handing you something with blocked out information. Maybe he meant revised. I don't know. Number two, he told Jacobus it was a 13th century document, and he stood on that. So he's a liar. Anyways, but what I want to demonstrate here is what the words of Ipuwer say. And here we have it here. So I'm gonna try to go as fast as I can, because like I said, I'm in a doghouse and it's not gonna be nice. Concerning the first of the plagues, God tells Moses to turn the water to blood. Thus saith the Lord, and this thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Behold, I will smite the rod that is in my hand upon the waters which are in the rivers, and they shall be turned blood. I'm gonna just go skip to what Ipuwer says. Indeed, the land turns around as does a potter's wheel. The robber is a possessor of riches, and the rich man has become a plunderer. If you remember, if you read in Exodus, how the children of Israel, before they left, they were taking things from it says they borrowed from their neighbors. They borrowed from the Egyptians, gold and all kinds of stuff. So what Ipuwer says here, he says that the possessor of riches and the rich man has become a plunderer. He continues, indeed, trusty servants are ... The poor man complains, how terrible, what am I to do? And then this is what he says about the blood. Indeed, the river is blood, yet men drink of it. Men shrink from human beings and thirst after water. I can go on and on about the Ipuwer papyrus, but for time purposes, I'll just continue on. Now, the Ipuwer papyrus, like he said, it is 13th dynasty. In the revised timeline, where do we have the Exodus? Dynasty 13. So basically, Ipuwer, from my perspective, will be or would
keep building, bro. I'll be right back.
All right, Ipuwer will be an eyewitness to the events. As far as the 10th plague is concerned, when we read Avaris and Pyramses, now this is Manfred Bitek. He is the one who did the excavations on Avaris or Pyramses. Now I'm gonna show you what he says. Uh-oh, I messed up again. This is what he says here. As far as the 10th plague is concerned, this is what the Bible says. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in his dungeon, and all the firstborn of the cattle. This is what Manfred Bitek said when he came upon the site at Avaris. He says, he describes in his book, Avaris and Pyramses, is page 295, that all over the city of Avaris, they found shallow graves or pits. The bodies within the graves would indicate that something terrible had happened and that the people in the graves were thrown into the pits in a hurry. He is convinced that we have evidence of plagues or a plague or some other type of catastrophe in Avaris. He also states that there was a mass abandonment of the town and its people who were Asiatic but were not Egyptianized. That's where I got the term Egyptianized from. In other words, B-Tech is saying that there was a population of Asiatics who were Egyptianized, but they abandoned the place. That goes along with the Exodus. Then he says that there was a second group of Asiatics that came in that were completely Canaanite. You can read that in that book right there. So when we're talking about stratigraphy basically deals with the level of soil that you find artifacts in. The higher the levels, the more recent the culture or the people. The deeper it is, the more older the culture and the people. So we look here, if you see to the right, you'll see the city of Ramses, and at a lower level, you see Avaris. This is where he found the pits. And to the right here, these are some of the bodies that were found by B-Tech. And unlike the culture that came after this group, these people are just slung into this pit. And this, again, dates to, or this is ascribed to the time of the 13th dynastic period. I'm going to keep saying that, the 13th dynastic period. This plague pit at the end of what is called Stratum G, the bodies found in these pits were part of an Asiatic group that had been highly Egyptianized after the town was abandoned. Another Asiatic group comes in. Egyptologists are not sure how long between the time that the bodies were placed in there and this new Asiatic group came in. But their burials were done in such a way to indicate that they were under some type of catastrophic plague. So we run over to Josephus. And this is what he says. I will begin with, and matter of fact, this is Josephus quoting Manetho about this time period. I will begin with Egyptian documents. These I cannot indeed set before you in their ancient form, but in Manetho, we have a native Egyptian who was manifestly imbued with Greek culture. He wrote in Greek, he wrote in the Greek history of his nation, translated as himself tells us from sacred tablets, and on many points of Egyptian history, he convicts Herodotus of having erred through ignorance. In the second book of his history of Egypt, this writer, Manetho, speaks of us as follows. So when he says us, he's talking about us Jews. I shall quote his own words just as if I had brought forward the man himself as a witness. Now, notice what he says. Anybody watching this, you can see the name Ptolemaios. Forgive me if I'm butchering this, but this is Josephus again, talking about Ptolemaios. In his reign, for what cause I know not, a blast of God smote us, and unexpectedly from the regions of the east, invaders of obscure race marched in confidently of victory against our land. By main force, they easily seized it without striking a blow, and having overpowered the rulers of the land, by main force, they easily seized it without striking a blow, and having overpowered the rulers of the land, they then burned our cities ruthlessly, razed to the ground the temples of gods, and treated all the natives with the cruel hostility, massacring some and leading some into slavery, and the wives and the children of others. Finally, they appointed as a king of one of their numbers, whose name was Salatus. If we know anything about Egyptian history, Salatus was one of the Hyksos' first kings. He continues, he had his seat in Memphis, levying tribute from Upper and Lower Egypt, and always leaving garrisons behind in the most advantageous positions. Above all, he fortified the districts to the east, foreseeing that the Assyrians, as they grew stronger, would one day covet and attack his kingdom. In the Sayed Sepharite Nome, he found a city very favorable, situated on the east of the Babustad branch of the Nile, and called Avaris, after an ancient religious tradition. So we have a connection here showing that Paya Ramses at one time was called Avaris. And in Avaris, we find the bodies that B-Tech found in a burial pit that was thrown in there in a hurry. And even B-Tech, the guy who he doesn't agree with the revised timeline, but he does agree that there was some type of plague that caused these people to be thrown in this pit in a hurry. And here we go. This is your Pharaoh of the Exodus. This is who I believe the Pharaoh of the Exodus was. Dudamus was a native Egyptian pharaoh during the second intermediate period, according to Egyptologist Kim Rolt. This is straight from Wiki. And Daryl Baker, he was a ruler of the Theban.
How dare you use Wikipedia, man? What are you doing?
Oh.
Go ahead. I'm just messing with you. Go ahead.
But alternatively, Jurgen von Beck, I can't say his name, Thomas, believes that he was a 13th dynasty king. So basically, concerning the Pharaoh of the Exodus, it will only make sense from the perspective of a revised chronology that the king of Egypt at the time would have been Dudamus II, not Ramses, not Ahmose, not Thutmoses, Dudimos. Oh, but look, you see this, right? Can you see the M-O-S-E at the end of Dudimos name? The same way.
I peeped it.
Okay.
I peeped it.
All right.
That's hilarious.
So this is pretty much it. But I just wanted to show you this, to show you the next time we have this discussion, I'm gonna be going into details about the Exodus itself, and that's gonna have a whole lot of information with it too.
Okay. So I know you in the doghouse. You got time for maybe 3 or 4 questions?
Yeah, I got time for 3 or 4 questions.
All right, I'm gonna drop the link in the chat. All right, family, I'm gonna drop the link in the chat. Come in. It's on me because I'm dog tired today. I got hit hard at the plantation, and my brother had a time constraint, so I was narrowing it down to 1 question. I know Google already said 1 question ain't enough, but that's the reason for the 1 question. You know, usually I let everybody go back and forth and build, but do me this courtesy and keep it to 1 question, and we can get on up out of here. But again, no cursing. We got kids watching now, you know, 11 and up, from what I understand. So no cursing, and come in, ask your question if you got them, and we'll get on up out of here, man. Brother put together a nice presentation. That was part 1. He gonna come back and do part 2, and maybe one day him and MVP can have a dialogue similar to what MVP and my brother Richie Garfield had. So
we can do that. It's just, you know, he's just not going to jump on and want to have the debate that I've been asking for 2 years now and think it's just going to fly. No, it don't happen that way.
Well, that was on me though. Like I said, I made an assumption that wasn't on Chris. That was on me inviting them in. So I take the
yeah, you instigated that, but that we're gonna talk about that.
Yeah, that was 100% on me. He didn't, you know, he didn't just he didn't just bombard his way in there. Like I said, I thought y'all could have a good build based on.
No, I saw where it was going already. That's why we need a completely different time to do that, because I want it. I want it. I want that. I want that.
Okay. So yeah, we'll see if we can get it going. My brother Google Scholar, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Peace. How y'all doing?
Peace, my brother.
What's up, bro? What's up, Google?
What's up? Now, I know you said we only get one question, but before I ask my question, I need you to clarify something for me. I just need to make sure, because it wasn't clear to me. Which Pharaoh are you naming the Pharaoh of the Exodus? Because from what you said, it seemed like you're saying it could be possibly two different people.
Well, basically, Dudamus the first or Dudamus the second, and the reason why is because Egyptologists are not sure which is which. Some of them separate them as as two people, and others are confused if Dudamus 1 is Dudamus 2 or Dudamus 2 is Dudamus 1, which is a common thing in Egyptology. But Dudamus, just to make it simple.
Okay, and that means you're placing that person in the 13th dynasty.
Yes, sir.
See, I'm not an expert in any of this. I don't really follow this stuff, but it would seem to me that if you, I understand you're making a theory, but I think in order for me to get my head around it, I would have to know the exact person you're naming as the Pharaoh. You know what I mean?
Dudamus.
Yeah, but there's 1 and 2. I don't know which one.
Well, both of them are attested to be 13th dynastic. One is theorized to be 16th dynastic. That would be Dudamus 2. As a matter of fact, the quote that I gave with Josephus, quoting Manetho, talking about two the males would be equivalent to Dudamus the second. So let's just say, for time constraint, Dudamus the second.
Okay, bro. To be honest, I don't know what to do with that, because I have 2 different dates for Dudamus the second. I have 16th dynasty and I have 13th dynasty, so it's not even sure.
Yeah, and I just explained that to you. Egyptologists are confused about it, which is why I feel like for anybody to want to hold on to this conventional timeline is crazy, because if we see that Egyptologists can't agree with each other, what's wrong with thinking for ourselves and trying to come up with conclusions with our own research? No, we don't have the doctrinal background that they have, but there's enough information out there for you, me, brother Pianki, my brother Darian here, to come up to our own conclusions.
Okay. If there's nobody else, I'd like to ask you if I noticed you reference David Roll a lot. Does he subscribe to this timeline that you're theorizing?
Yeah, if you looked at the spreadsheet I provided, you would see that it's accredited to David Rowe. I just created spreadsheet.
Oh, okay. And is this mainstream, or is this considered fringe in Egyptology?
Well, according to Google, he's considered fringe. But speaking to the man, because that's what they say at the bottom of Google.
Right. I think that's putting it mildly, my brother. But I ain't mad at you if that's who you want to ride with.
But the thing is, it's like I talked to the man himself. You know what I'm saying? So he explained to me his credentials. He's been to all of these sites. He knows how to read hieroglyphs. the meta nature, as Bianchi calls it, and he's done the work. So just because he doesn't go along with the conventional scheme of things is the only reason why he's considered fringe.
Let me ask you this before Google continues. Because I talked to Emily Teeter and Bruce Williams at the Oriental Institute. What's mainstream Egyptology, if that's even a term? What since he's considered fringe, what would be the mainstream's position on his position?
Basically, those 4 pillars I spoke about. I was in the archaeological Facebook group, and they either bring up 4 things. 1, 664 BC, the sacking of Thebes by Asahardra, or Shoshank going into Jerusalem, which I've already demonstrated. Shoshank didn't go into Jerusalem. He didn't even touch Jerusalem. The closest he got was Ajalon. Third, the Sothic dating system, which I explained, and I'm pretty sure it went over quite a lot of people's head, but the movement of the star series that circulates back around every 1400 years. But if I'm looking at the star at, let's see, 130 AD, and I calculate backwards 1400 years, and I see where the Egyptian text says that at the rise of this particular pharaoh, this inundation in line with this star happened, then they'll come up with a particular date. But that date can only be established by number 2, Shoshank. So they either quote one or all 4 of those pillars. So that's mainstream Egyptology at its finest. Shoshank the first is Shishak of the Bible. And again, there's no archaeological evidence to show that he went into Jerusalem. None.
As I understand,
go ahead, Google. You do got one person after you, Google. So go, but go ahead.
Let me just say this, and I'll fall back, because as I mentioned, I'm not even well read on this. I just I skim it, but as I understand, the reason why well, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why they have rejected Rhodes' idea is that they're saying in order to make his timeline fit, he has shaved like about 300 years off the 3rd intermediate period.
Right.
And so that's an issue. And I noticed you kind of had that in your presentation.
Let me ask you, Google, why is the 3rd intermediate period a problem? Why would someone suggest that the timeline needs to be shortened there? Do you know why?
Well, I don't know. No, I don't know why. But
so how can you have a problem about something that you don't know about?
No, listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying
because the writing, because the writing stopped at this time period. That's why. In the 3rd intermediary period, there was what you call a dark age, or a dark period of writing at this time frame.
Ooh, that's a funny one. The Greek Dark Ages. Go ahead, Google.
No, I did not mention the Greek Dark Ages. This happened around the time when the Philistines began to infiltrate into that area. And this is the people that were coming off the sea coastline. This is why I asked you a question. The gentleman is asking the sea people, yes. So the question that this gentleman is asking you is a legitimate question. He's asking you, is it Dudimos the first or Dudimos the second? And you are placing them in the 16th dynastic period, which is odd because that would mean this is around the 17th century BCE. How can that be so when Moses was encountering the Philistines and they don't get there into the Levant until the 12th century BCE? So now you have a problem, not with someone such as yourself, but with your theory and the theory that you're trying to legitimize on this panel. Break that down for us.
All right, so
this is archaeologically that they get there. Supported by any mainstream archaeologists that the Philistines get there in the 12th century BCE. Can you break that down?
All right.
You got the floor.
Anyways, So the reason why the third intermediate period is such a problem is because they believe that the pharaohs of that time were contemporaries instead of one after the other. That's the reason why the third intermediate period is said it needs to be shortened.
No, that's the reason why roll is shortening. But
No,
as I'm saying,
he's not the only one. You also got David Downs. You got plenty of archaeologists who look at it and say that perhaps Manetho was wrong. His list was wrong. Also, the Shoshank versus Shishak issue is a problem, and the list for the third intermediate period is a problem because it looks as if it has been artificially extended.
well, like I said, I'm not really studied on this, so I wouldn't even debate you on that. I'll just fall back and let Chris, if you want to ask him some questions.
Once again,
All
he's
right,
trying to
I
legitimize
appreciate
the
you,
theory.
bro.
Okay, once again, he's trying to legitimize a theory put forth by David Roll. The third intermediary period was happened because there was the Bronze Age collapsed at this time. This was after the death of Ramses. I think you're trying to put forth a theory that you yourself aren't quite understanding. David Roll is not accepted in any of the archaeologist circles. He is what you call fringe, according to Google. So I still need you to answer my question, though. How is it that you're placing them in the 17th century BCE and they are encountering Philistines who don't get there into the 12th century BCE? Can you please explain that to me, because you've been using your Bible as the authority all day?
Philistines. Okay, Philistines. I'm gonna have to come back to you on the whole Philistines topic, because from my understanding, the Philistines are actually from the island of Crete, and they were not complete. They weren't even Canaanites, but they did migrate into Canaan and intermarried with the Canaanites. As to when, because I'm dealing with a revised chronology, I haven't gotten that far as of yet. But it could be another example of an anachronism. For example, I just quoted Josephus quoting Manetho, who uses the term Assyrians, but we know that there was no Assyrians during the time of Sobek Hotep the fourth. So that could be the issue there.
Real quick, and I want everybody to hear what he just did. He is once again presenting a theory that he is trying to legitimize or make legitimate on this channel. And he is failing to answer a critical question. And I don't think he understands what an anachronism is. Let me explain it to you. Because Chris, if there is an anachronism, may I finish?
Go back to the slides. I provided the definition of anachronism.
Excuse me.
Hey, stop.
I can show discipline when I hold on.
No, bro. I already provided the definition of anachronism.
Bianchi. Straighten this up. I can show great discipline when he's talking.
Negetee, let him finish, because this gonna be it, and then we're gonna get ready to close out.
All right.
Okay. An anachronism.
Like his fifth question.
Someone is writing. Okay. Excuse me. Have some discipline.
And I thought he bounced.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, because you said that I was running from you in some type of way when I debate the best on this topic. So let me continue on.
We got 2 years.
An anachronism, one more time.
Come on, Negetee,
this is a shame.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
It's a shame. It's a shame. Like I said, an anachronism, if you're saying Moses wrote this, he would know nothing about Ramses. The Ramesside kings don't come around into the 19th dynastic period. That's when they come around. How are you guys building the city of Ramses when you guys were already gone, according to this silly theory that you're presenting? Now, an anachronism means you are writing about something and there is something out of place. Say, for instance, if I'm writing
about basketball in 1967, I can't say that Cassie Russell was wearing a pair of Jordan 12s. The timeline don't fit. So how is it that Moses is encountering all these different people groups who don't get there until the 12th century BCE, when apparently you're telling us it's between two kings that you don't know, Dudimos or Dudimos II, when they aren't even mentioned? It is the 12th dynastic, excuse me, it is the 19th dynastic period that's being mentioned under the Ramesside kings, which were arguably some of the greatest kings in Egyptian history. I'm failing to follow your logic that you have set forth with your theory. I'm not addressing you per se, I'm addressing your methodology.
Can I respond?
You don't have an answer
Can I
because
respond?
you said you had to get back with me. Please do.
Respond? Okay,
Sure.
so now, all right.
Go ahead, Negetee.
All right, so now you're bringing up Ramses. So if you was here earlier, you would have seen where I stated that the mentioning of Ramses and Python was an anachronism. And I also demonstrated how Josiah, after discovering the holy books, the sacred books, his scribe Hilkiah would have updated that book. Now, to the example that you was giving, you said, oh, we're talking about basketball. Well, I'm gonna use one that my brother Adam Coleman used on you and explain.
I've never spoken to Adam Coleman.
Okay, Garfield, whoever you was talking to, they stated that his parents moved to New York, or his great-grandparents moved to New York. But at the time that they moved there, it was called New Amsterdam. That's so instead of him saying my parents or grandparents or great-grandparents moved to New Amsterdam because you wouldn't understand or know what he was talking about, he used the term New York. So when we're looking at the time of Josiah, at the time when they found the holy books, and it could have been during the time of Josiah, post or pre-destruction or pre-Babylonian captivity, or post-Babylonian captivity, where Nehemiah and Ezra had the books, discovered the books again. There could have been an update at that point in time. So instead of using the term avarice, they used the most current name, which at that time in 600 something BC was Ramses. Too easy. So it's been good, Pianki, and I appreciate you letting me come on and do this.
No doubt. So when when you get some time and you're not gonna be in the doghouse, man, we got to do part 2. So keep that in mind. This was just part 1, but yeah, get straight with the wife, and then we'll schedule something for part 2.
Roger that. And as far as the discussion with Chris, yeah, bro, you owe me. You owe me 2 years, bro. 2 years. So we gonna get it on.
Hey, do this go back to the back chat?
It go back to the back. Look, it goes back to before you and I, before this.
So I ain't even know you. Okay.
This is when me and him had discussions when we was in Greg's group, and he's still spitting the same information from that point in time, almost 3-4 years ago. Notice I say 3.
Okay.
3 years.
One more time, Brother Pianki, let me address everything he just said real quick. We're gonna wrap this on up.
Go ahead.
All right. Because I present myself as honest as possible, and people grow from 3 years ago. Just to let you know, Negetee, it's called growth. All right. 3 years ago, I was 37 years old. You get a little older and you just get tired of the games every now and then. So I don't need any of your ad hominem attacks. I'm only dealing with your methodology here. Now, I want you guys to recognize something, what he's doing here. He's now admitting that Moses wrote anachronistically in this text, and he's trying to use Josiah. Excuse me.
You're lying.
I'm not lying.
Let him go. He ain't saying He ain't
This
saying
is
that
what-
while you was going. Let him close out.
Thank you.
Cause you still
Thank you.
gonna
And he's
close
not-
out. You still gonna close out, Negetee.
Yeah. What he's trying to do is go to Josiah, who is not even a real king, to try to set a date for. Josiah is only mentioned in the biblical narrative. It's only mentioned in the biblical narrative. There hasn't been any discovery of Josiah. Then you went to Ezra, who was during the Persian period. The very first question I asked you was, what were you using to get your dating? Because First Kings chapter 6, verse 1 tells you that it was 400 years from the beginning of the construction of the temple. That's what it says. And this is where you're getting your timeline from. So when you were mentioning stratigraphy, when an archaeologist digs into a ground, there are levels of stratigraphy on how he dates the stratigraphy. Let me explain science here. And he goes, this is 1100, 1200, 1300, 1400, 1500, and that's how they discovered the stratigraphy. It's stratigraphical layers. I asked you a key question, and you got very defensive about it. And I asked you, what was the stratigraphy that was found concerning Solomon's temple? You never answered that. And I don't think you can answer that because there's never been any temple found. So you can't give a date because your Bible is dating it from that time period. There has never been, Solomon's temple has never, and I mean never, been discovered. Nor there is no mention of Solomon, Jedediah, or any other David. There's no mention of them. That's why I asked you, brother, for the date. How did you get your date? What you're doing is a technique called spreading. And what you guys do is you guys mention all this overwhelming information, and you overwhelm the audience with all this information. And it makes you sound smart, but I can ask one question. How did you get your date? And you got defensive. Negetee, there is no debate between me and you. It would not be worth my time. No disrespect, but you even use the Ewer papyrus. The Ewer papyrus never mentions the death of any firstborn. As a matter of fact, it speaks of Semites invading their land. It's the total reverse. This would mean the people who put this book together saw the Egyptian narratives or writings found in Egypt, because your book was put together at the Library of Alexandria, and started using those stories for inspiration concerning your text. Not understanding that science would one day develop and we will be able to uncover these things. Why is it no temple can be found? But we can find temples in ancient Egypt that date back to 2500 BCE. They left an abundance of evidence over there. You want to deal with the fictional kings? I'll deal with the real ones. I'll deal with the real Nubian kings, the real West African kings. I could care less about Egypt. They did not secure the borders. That's why you goat herders came in there with your nonsense. So keep your book and your logical fallacies and your weak theory to yourself. I ain't interested in debating you. Chris MVP Harris signing out. I'm done.
Oh, he left. What would be the point of me responding if he left? I mean, it's not fair. I feel cheated. I feel robbed again. And now he said I don't have a chance. I don't have a chance.
I'm sure y'all will talk again, man. So
You don't want to talk to me.
I can't tell. I mean, it seemed like y'all, yeah. I didn't know it went back to before I knew either of y'all. So that's interesting to know. I thought this started when I added him to the. Yeah, no. I had no idea that this went. I thought I was the catalyst, but I guess not. I thought too highly of myself, huh?
Do you ever wonder why? Like, I'm not bragging, because my brethren, my Christian brethren, that come on this show and talk, they're a lot more prolific than I am, but they always pay me homage for some reason. I don't know. I don't know why, but a lot of people that you speak with, we've been rocking for a good little minute in the Christian circle. My brother Darian on here, he can tell you, like, it goes back years, and that whole situation with Chris, that goes back to Greg's group 3-4 years ago. So,
Wow.
but let me respond to what he was saying, and then we can close it out if that's okay.
Yeah, and before you respond, I see my brother say, I let the conscious, hold on. I let the conscious members interrupt and talk over people when it's their show. That's not true, but okay.
It's fine. I don't feel no kind of way.
I mean, the thing is, everybody talk over everybody. I maintain control as best I can with grown people. I almost broke my own rule there because I almost cursed, but I don't want to get kicked off my own show by myself, so I'm not gonna.
It's like getting fired on your day off.
It's like firing myself on my day off, but yeah, nah. I maintain control as best I can with grown ass people. So, you know, and when it come down to it, if somebody asks me to knock somebody, then they get knocked. I got called out for that one time. That was Cap 10K because I let my little bro Nobody linger. And he called me out because he said, you don't do that with nobody else. I asked you to kick somebody off, you kick them off, but with your little bro, you let them stay on.
I heard that.
So I was like, you know what? He right. So I ain't did it since. So miss me with that crazy shit. Go ahead, bro.
All right. So I wrote down everything he was saying, trying to keep up because I know he likes to go on a tangent, but temple not found. Well, Matthew 24 says, not one stone should be found upon another. So if you can't find the Jewish temple, that is why Jesus said it will be destroyed. It was destroyed and every stone was removed. That happened in 70 AD. Scratch that. Science to me, actually, science is palatable, or it goes hand in hand with the Bible, except for in parts that are miraculous, like supernatural, because science can't explain supernatural. So when it comes to science, because he was talking about stratigraphy, that's fine. I'll get into that in a second. But science, the basic definition of science is observation of the physical universe through tests and experiments. And anything apart from that, it's just speculation. So when the Bible says he put the seed within the fruit and the fruit bears seed of itself, when you plant a fruit seed or apple seed, it doesn't grow up an orange seed, it grows up an apple seed. A dog, you heard this from Jacobus before, a dog doesn't give birth to a cat or to a lizard, it gives birth to a dog. I can see that. So that's what real science is. When you observe what you observe and can test and prove. Okay. As far as the plagues that took place, and especially what Iperur said, I did pull up B-Tech, who is the archaeologist who did the work at the site that is called Avaris, aka Pyramses, and he himself stated that the death pits that he saw indicated that there was some type of plague. But the only reason why he doesn't agree with it is he doesn't agree with the biblical narrative is because he's looking in the right place, but at the wrong time. Solomon dating, they got Solomon Gates, and that's dated to the early Iron Age. As far as he's talking about stratigraphy, they have Solomon Gates. But the thing is about Solomon Gates, there are two stone columns that are accredited to Solomon himself. And I wish I can find it. But there was also a discovery of, you know how like you sit on a throne and you have the arm of the chair? Well, the arm of the chair, the top part of it was made out of ivory. And on it was seated a Semitic king who was flanked by 2 seraphim or 2 griffins, and he had an Egyptian wife. Hold up. Did Solomon marry an Egyptian? He sure did. He sure did. And it had.
Oh, those were griffins, by the way, my last name. But go ahead.
Got you. So yeah, we do have evidence of Solomon. The Moabite stone, House of David. It mentions the House of David. What is Chris talking about? There's no archaeological evidence. It mentions the House of David and Azael, one of the kings of freaking Israel. Okay, let me continue. Stratigraphy. I thought I explained that a little earlier. Stratigraphy works, like he said, they look at certain levels in the earth, and the deeper it is, the older it is. But they don't come up with absolute dates just by saying, oh, this is 1100 BC, this and that. There are presuppositions that's already in place for them to make those dates. Moving on. There's no evidence for Josiah. Perhaps there's no evidence of Josiah, but there's definitely evidence, and Google Scholar or anybody else can go and Google this. The Milcala, which was the scribe of Josiah, his signet ring, or the signet ring of his son Shaphan, has been found. Maybe he don't know about that one. And last but not least, Ramses and the naming of Ramses. I didn't say Moses wrote Ramses or the city of Ramses. I stated that Josiah, when he found the books and his scribes, would have updated the place name of Avaris to Pyramses, which was like the example from New Amsterdam to New York. And that's basically it. Over and out.
And then there was one. And so with that being said, bro, this was part 1. Hopefully we're going to get to part 2 because we ran long and your wife is not going to be happy. She be going to be like, you ain't going back on there with that Pianca Chichi dude no more. So, but yeah, man, let me know when you're ready to do part 2. We'll get to it. And I will not have MVP come in ahead of time thinking I know better than y'all do, because clearly that wouldn't work. But yeah, we'll get to it, man. And just let me know when you're available. And I thought it was a good presentation, man. Well put together for those who had issues with the scholarship or whatever it was with the presentation. I say this, he said it was theories and evidence before it's in the title. So if you got an issue with that, then I don't know what to tell you. Again, it's a theory. It's theories and evidence. The brother laid it out there before we even came on. So it is what it is. So with that being said, it's been my brother Negetee. I call him the prophet. It's because some things he told me about when he was younger. So I'm standing on that title. And this has been Theories and Evidence for the Biblical Exodus, Part 1. Hopefully, it ain't going to be a year before we get to Part 2. But with that being said, this Paradigm Shift TV 314, this your brother DMG, the poet, a.k.a. Brother Pianca. And that's peace. We out.
God bless.
Appreciate you.